Welcome to The Real Impact series on Tell Me Your Story with yours truly, Richard Dugan, and Dennis Henson, author of Real Impact, Daily Inspiration, available at realimpactbook.com. We will go into that as we proceed throughout this program, but we're now going to hear a story that Dennis and I are going to talk about, and it is having to do with... I want to say, Dennis, it's almost sounds a little bit like the process of alchemy, turning things into gold. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us here on the program and turning this program into gold.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
This story has to do with someone who took a dime and turned it into $1 million.
She turned a dime into millions. Martha McChesney Berry grew up on a large cotton plantation in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains near Rome, Georgia. Her father managed their estate and several other businesses. After completing high school, she also received a degree from Edgeworth Finishing School. However, the young Miss Berry was aware that sadly the mountain children around her never have the opportunity to participate in any school. After a chance meeting with a few children on a Sunday afternoon, she resolved to afford those little ones the prospect of an education. So in the late 1890s, Martha Berry constructed a one-room whitewashed building on the corner of her father's estate. Once completed, the Berry School began offering classes to the children in the North Georgia hills. Students wanting to attend were allowed to barter for their tuition, and there was a good reason for that option. The children's families had little or no money. The families were excited at the prospect of their kids having an opportunity to attend school, so for the youngsters' tuition, they contributed whatever they had. Some brought eggs, others a jar of jam, a quilt, or a chicken. One family even brought their milk cow. To receive room and board, the students worked in the garden, kept up the grounds, chopped wood, cleaned the classroom, gathered eggs, cooked meals, and scrubbed the floors. They grew what they ate. As word spread of a free education, attendance mushroomed and more food and larger buildings were needed. Martha's heart was big, but her bank account was small. The little school faced crisis after crisis, and the cause was always the same, money. Yet Miss Berry was devoted to her students and dreamed of finding a way to keep the school open. Still, the prospects weren't good. Then one day a little boy ran up to Martha holding a newspaper clipping. "Miss Berry, Miss Berry." "What is it, Johnny?" "Oh, Miss Berry, you need to talk with Henry Ford." "Why on earth should I do that?" "It says in this paper that he's got a lot of money, and he gives it to people who need it." Then Johnny said, his hands trembling, "I think we need it, Miss Berry." A short time later, the young educator did write to Ford to explain her dream of educating the poor children of the Blue Ridge Mountains. After mailing the envelope, Martha prayed that the wealthy philanthropist would understand the situation and provide some financial assistance to her school. Unfortunately, the crusty old industrialist had been contacted by so many asking for his money, he'd become cynical and believed that every person and organization in the country was looking to him for a free handout. So Ford had little sympathy for Martha's situation. However, he did send her something. He sent her a dime, one thin dime, worth 10 cents and nothing more. Martha Berry could have taken that dime and told herself, "I tried and it just didn't work out." But the young teacher wasn't quite ready to give up. Taking a pen and paper, she jotted down a plan encompassing all the resources in her control. Her list included the knowledge of farming, having been raised on a plantation, the strength and loyalty of her students, the availability of her father's land, the tools and resources on his plantation, nature's ability to multiply, and of course that dime from Henry Ford. Once her plan was complete, Martha took the coin to a feed store in Rome and bought 10 cents worth of peanuts. When she returned, she gathered her students and presented them with a new project. They were told that their part would be difficult, it would take hard work, and they would still be expected to do their classwork and other chores. Then, emphasizing its importance, she asked the children if they would see the project through. All the students accepted the challenge. So Martha took 4 stakes and marked off a small section of land near the schoolhouse. Then she set up teams and appointed a leader for each one. The older boys were to clear the small trees and bushes from the field. Meanwhile, the younger children placed each peanut seed in a small container, added fertilizer, and watered it daily. The other groups gathered rakes, hoes, buckets, and other items needed to tend a crop. Once the field was cleared, the older boys plowed the ground and prepared it for planting. All the students diligently prepared each furrow. When the sprouts were ready, they carefully placed the tiny buds in the furrow. Each day in the hot Georgia sun, while one team worked to pull the weeds from among the young plants, others carried buckets of water into the field. No peanut crop had ever received such copious attention. As their harvest grew, Martha again asked the older boys to start clearing, only this time the new field was not small. She laid out a section of more than an acre, and of course it took the boys longer to prepare the larger area for planting. The children never complained and worked diligently to ensure the project succeeded. The first peanut crop responded well to all the attention and the nice Georgia weather. Their harvest was bountiful, and those little ones had never seen so many peanuts. Yet their project was only beginning. The peanuts from the first crop were again prepared to be planted in the larger field. With both fields seeded, Martha staked out what must have seemed like 100 acres. It was actually 88 acres. Nevertheless, the children remained loyal. Clearing, plowing, planting, and tending were again completed. The crop not only responded, it outproduced the first one. This harvest was so massive that it took several wagons to deliver the produce to the feed company. When Little Berry School's peanut harvest was weighed, it brought the astonishing sum of $1,500. Her students had masterfully accomplished their part of Martha's plan. But the young teacher's strategy was not yet complete. After placing the $1,500 in her bank account, she wrote a check to Henry Ford for the entire amount. Then, signing the check, she put it in her envelope along with the following letter and mailed it to Henry Ford. Dear Mr. Ford, here is your $1,500 dividend for the 10-cent investment you made in Berry School. Faithfully yours, Martha Berry. When the old business magnate read the letter and saw the check, he was so moved that he took the next train to Rome to meet Miss Martha Berry. While in Rome, Ford visited the little schoolhouse and saw the poor children working their hearts out. He watched them study and saw their devotion to Martha and to learning. And before he departed, the great carmaker wrote Berry School a substantial check. That money was only the first of a long string of donations. Henry and his wife Clara formed a lifelong friendship with Martha. His total donations to the Berry Schools were estimated at over $3 million. Those that seek out the easy make themselves weaker. Those that seek out the difficult make themselves stronger. Martha Berry. As a young man, I had the privilege of attending what is now Berry College. The campus is one of the most beautiful in the South, if not the entire nation. At the time I attended, Berry College's campus in land area was the largest college campus in the world, 30,000 acres. No matter how busy you may think you are, you must find time for reading, or surrender yourself to self-chosen ignorance. Confucius. Failure will never overtake me if my determination to succeed is strong enough. Og Mandino.
I love that last quote especially. And one of the things that has always intrigued me when it comes to reading is that I want to read more. Whether it be the classics. I remember a course in psychology at junior college. I think I was a C student, and yet I enjoyed the coursework. It didn't matter how well or not that I did in the exams and what have you. I just enjoyed it, and many other subjects as well. And I find today, at the age of 65, which is amazing still to me. Um, Not only how much I don't know, but conversely, even, and not proudly, I don't say this proudly, how much I do know when I talk to you, when I talk to other guests, when I talk to other people, and things just start flowing out, and I'm not making them up. I'd like to hope I'm remembering what I learned, what I experienced. And that's kind of what you're talking about through these different stories, including this one about how this incredible woman, who, by the way, I'd have to do some genealogical investigation to find out whether or not she is related to my wife's mother's side of the family. Their last name was Berry, and I'm not sure if it was with an A or an E, but nonetheless, um, what a an extraordinary woman she was, and the level of commitment that she had, and she did not. Some people today, if somebody gave them a dime, hey, I really need some help, and and they would be insulted, but I didn't get that from her. She wasn't insulted. She said, okay, I'll take this and we'll see what we can do. It's amazing.
She was an amazing woman. And I grew up in Northeast Alabama, which was the town I lived in was 30 miles, 35 miles from Rome.
Hmm.
And so we knew about Berry College, and I learned that story. The first time I heard that story was in Vacation Bible School when I was just a little boy. We'd march in, and they would tell a little motivational story about missionaries or something. And when I would put this book together, I remembered that story from back in the early 50s. And I thought, that may be a good story to put in the book. And I did a lot of research, which was difficult because there's not a lot written about Martha Berry on the internet, but I had a lot of help
Hmm.
from Martha Berry.
Well,
She she is known to have visited the people, especially children, that uh, come to her old office in her home. It's kind of one of the psychic things, but children see her and talk with her and explain what she looked like and so forth. And so when I was writing this story, it was like I didn't know the story that well, but I wrote it anyway. It was just coming. It just kept coming. The more I worked on it, the easier it became to do it. So I know that a lot of the story is correct because that letter that's in there was the actual letter. I mean, I've actually seen a picture of it and several of the other things. But then a lot of it, as I explained earlier in the book, was I took a lot of liberties in putting it together. But from the research I did, it's pretty close to being accurate.
mhm.
And I know for sure that's still the largest college in the world. I mean, there's no other college that has 30,000 acres. Not even close. So the money came from somewhere, and it was probably Henry Ford.
And that's incredible. Starting out with a very small piece of property, then going to 88 acres, and then, as you say, 30,000 to this day. And that is a legacy that not only she left, but even Henry Ford is must be credited with helping to leave a legacy of education
Right.
behind, you know, and that's so important. And we talk about, I mean, certainly formal education is important. I would never ever say that it isn't. And yet at the same time, I also think too that the informal, the life lessons that we learn as we live our lives and we have our experiences and we meet the people and we travel to this place and that and so forth. Boy, there's a lot there that we have learned and that we can then in turn share with others. And so, again, that's the beautiful thing about the book, Real Impact Daily Inspiration, is all of these people that you have written about and incorporated into this book. Through you, they are leaving a legacy as well. And it's quite remarkable.
Right. Yeah, I've often thought that when you read something that someone has written, if you read something that Henry Ford wrote, you're literally, it's like he's talking to you through time. You're connecting with his brainwaves
Hmm.
through time.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. So reading is a powerful thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we will continue to share these stories throughout this year here on the Daily Inspiration. The book is entitled Real Impact Daily Inspiration, available through Daily Impact. I want to keep saying daily. We want to have you read daily, yes, but we want to give you the name of the book and the website. It's realimpactbook.com, where you can get yourself a free ebook. And that is through that web page. Scroll to the bottom to the podcast attendees link. Click on that and sign up, and you will have access to a free ebook. If you have unlimited Kindle, you already have access to a free Kindle version. You can also purchase your own copy of the hardcover or paperback by going to that website. There are links, and there are also links to other wonderful aspects of the Real Impact story, if you will. Not only the story of the lamp that is on the cover of the book, but also, as Dennis has shared with us time and time again, this wonderful GoFundMe program where 100% of whatever you can support and give goes towards purchasing copies of Real Impact to hand out to kids, to children, to give them, I think, a foot up, if you will, as the phrase goes, in terms of that aspect of inspiration, because there are a lot of kids maybe aren't getting a lot of inspiration in their lives, and they're in circumstances that for whatever reason are just not conducive. And so now they have this book they can read. And Dennis, I have heard so many stories of different individuals who come from, I guess the best phrase that I can think of to use is impoverished areas. Both financially impoverished, but also physically in terms of living where they're living, and in terms of the people who live in the dwelling, that impoverished type of thing. We've heard of stories of children when they become adults telling the stories of going from one foster home to another and another and another, and how that could have beaten them down and ended any possibility of success in their lives. But they found a way, maybe through a mentor, to turn it around, to go a different direction than they could have. And that ties in, of course, into my book about choices, 5 Steps for Life, where that's what you first start. That's what you have to do first. You have to make a choice.
Exactly.
Maybe, but you don't always know what choice. And that translates from my book to yours in that you have to know what you want, or
Right.
you have to know where you want to go. Well, you have to make a choice. And, I often think, for example, of Nelson Mandela. Now, here's a man who spent, I believe, if I'm correct in the information that I have in my head, this goes back to the things that I know, at least I hope I know this, who spent, I believe, 25 years in prison. But he wrote about how he could have become bitter and angry and more violent, and the list goes on of those things. But he didn't. He went the other way to the extent that eventually he actually became the president of South Africa and getting rid of apartheid and so forth. I mean, that's a heck of a choice to make. I can keep going the way I'm going. That's easy. That's the easy part. Keep going the way I'm going. And I might be dead in 5 or 10 years. Or I could go the other way. And that's what he did. And that's what you are offering people to consider. Are you going the direction you want to go? If you are, keep going. But if not, and you want more out of life, I would surely pick up a copy of Real Impact Daily Inspiration. We'll continue our conversation with Dennis Henson. I'm Richard Dugan, and you are listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. This series of programs that we have agreed to do here, Dennis, and I'm grateful for your agreeing to and participating in these programs. When I was thinking about it and then presenting it to you, it was truly to have some continuity. It's not that I don't have continuity in the other 8 broadcasts and podcast videocasts that I post, but there just seemed it just felt right to do this, to create this series, to focus on each of these stories. And there will be some programs where we will touch upon some of the quotes and maybe have you, have you, your narrator, share with us some of the poetry. I don't know if the list of books, the bibliography, and your list of inspirational books is part of the narration per se.
It
Uh,
is.
but, but that's something too that I think would be fascinating to listen to a 5 or 10, and then maybe have you expound, a bit on why was that book? What is it about that book that touched you, or that story, and this author, and so forth? I mean, you've certainly shared about people like Og Mandino and Zig Ziglar and so forth. But we may go down that road as well. Um, for those who are joining us for the first time, for example, I would love for you to expound on your path to where you are today, with the possibility of, and I've lost count. I don't know if you're going to have 8 or 10 or 12 books out by the end of this year. I mean, it's phenomenal.
I think that the writing of the books it was just a natural progression because I taught real estate investing for 15 years and had some super successful students. And
Mhm.
in putting together their training, that's what became the books. I
Mhm.
mean, their training was, it was mostly just outlines, but it was really easy for me to fill in the outlines because I had said it over and over and over and over. So the real estate books were really easy to put together. The Real Impact Daily Inspiration, you know, I used to hear pastors say they were called to preach, and I thought, well, what does that mean?
Mhm.
What does that feel like? I didn't understand that at all. But when I was on that podcast that day, and uh, the host said, Dennis, why are your students successful? And I said, well, I just haven't changed their habits. If they form good habits, they'll be successful. And
Mhm.
then they said, well, what's the number one habit? And I said, form the habit of reading something positive every day to move them toward their goal. And then after the podcast, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great to have something to help people form that habit? Because habits are not easy to form,
Mm-mm.
especially people that are busy. They think another habit? What do you mean? I don't have time. So then when I realized I'd been collecting powerful books, short stories, quotes, and poems for 50 years, I thought, who would be in a better position to put together something that could help people form that habit, which is what the book's about. It's not about the stories. The stories are interesting, and they're interesting enough so you'll want to come back the next day and read another one.
Mhm.
But that's not what the book's about. The book's about helping you get over the hump of reading a little bit every day and getting to the point where you don't have to think about it anymore. You're just going to do it. Like my walking habit. I had a speaking engagement 2 weeks ago. And I was exhausted. We worked all day. We had to get there and get everything set up, and get the books ready, and make sure I was going to be there to write. I mean, the entire day was packed. We went out to eat. We came back to the hotel, and I had to get up really early the next morning to do the speech. And I just hit the bed, and I was just totally exhausted. I thought, oh, I'm going to sleep well tonight. And then I realized I haven't walked today. I was already in the bed. I'd already changed my clothes. I got up out of the bed. This is how strong the habit was. I got up out of the bed. I put my clothes on. I went outside and I walked the thousands and thousands of steps, came back, laid down, went to sleep. So once you formed a habit and it's really ingrained in you, nothing's going to stop you. Nothing's going to. And this book makes it so simple. If you got 5 minutes, you read the poem. And it's not about the quantity of the reading. It's the quality. And the book is full of quality. It's quality reading. And if you just read a few sentences, that may be enough.
Yeah.
Or contemplate the rest of the day. So that's why I think the book is so valuable.
The other aspect of this too is when we read these stories, lots of things will come up in our own minds,
Right.
memories, if you will, and hopefully good memories, memories that elicit an emotional response, not only as you've described many times, a tear flowing down one's cheek, but if you will, in a manner of speaking, a warm, fuzzy feeling, but it has to do with a sense of self-worth, of confidence, and so forth. And it's to me, it is just extraordinary, in my opinion, the way that these stories can do that, and they can remind us as individuals of our own accomplishments, our own successes, our own, I'll use the word miracles, but there was another word you used rather than miracles. We did incorporate, of course, divine intervention. We said, so, well, yeah, okay, maybe there is some of that, and maybe that's something we'll read about in the third iteration of Real Impact, which will be very exciting. But there's also that aspect of doing the work in order to make the goal happen, in order to bring it about. Because if you don't do the work, it ain't going to happen.
And that's one of the 7 secrets. Take
Yeah,
massive action.
exactly.
Uh,
Dennis, go ahead, Dennis.
like Mandino said, my dreams are worthless, if I don't take action. So
Yeah.
that's true.
I'm going to share something, and it has to do with as our conversation has taken place. Um, as I've shared with you and our listeners, of course, I've been working on sales for the radio station that I work for here in Santa Barbara, and there was a sale that I accomplished. I completed. It was actually a completion, and unfortunately, the client decided after 4 weeks or so that, well, I don't think this is for me, and I didn't take it personally. It's just, again, everybody has the right to make the choices that they make. That's fine. And I also make commissions on what I sell. And I thought, well, okay, that's not going to be a long-term commission, but you know what? Boy, that's going to be nice. Even for that 1 month, that's going to be a big chunk of change. And then things started to fall apart. We came to the end of the month of the contract and so forth, and we're waiting and waiting and waiting. Well, this is what I wanted to share. I still actually have the very first check of commission that I have received as a salesperson in my career. But that one client, I was just texted a photograph, a picture of the check for that month that I didn't think I would ever see. Now, I wasn't stewing over the fact that I hadn't received it. Okay. It's like, Okay, fine. Because I've been in this business long enough, there have been clients who, advertisers and so forth, who they don't pay and they just disappear. It happens, and you pursue it for a while and eventually you realize there's nothing in this. I'm going to let it go and we'll just look for more people to join our family. And I saw that picture of that check for that payment. And of course, I know that I will get the commission from that now, which is, again, it's pretty substantial. And I thought, I did it. I accomplished it. It wasn't about getting them to sign a 6 month or 1 year contract. That wasn't it. It was about getting this person to become a part of our family, even for the month, even for a short time, and to show them what it is that we can produce for them, what we can give them in the way of our services. And then in turn, they again, they agree with the contract but creating that relationship. And of course, one of my first thoughts after I saw that was, I'm going to call her and I'm going to thank her and say, thank you so much for sticking with me in the final steps of this process. I really do appreciate it. And to me, that's the process of, because I used the word with my boss. I says, I'm going to be tenacious about this. And it happened. And I'm very excited. And I will say it again. If it didn't happen, I would let it go and say, hey, we have to move on. Because there's nothing in it for me to hold on to, maybe the resentment or the frustration or whatever it is.
Right.
Waiting and waiting. As I said, sometimes you just have to let it go. And sometimes the sooner the better. And I would venture that some of the stories that we've talked about over this past year, this half year, tell that story. It comes a point where you have to, what's the phrase? Fish or cut bait. All right. And so I'm of the mind, I'm willing to do both. Either whichever is necessary. I'll either continue to fish, or in this case, I'll cut bait. And I'm excited, because it shows me my resilience, my commitment, and also gives me the confidence to continue to go out and say, hey, how would you like to be a part of our family here? We can make you sound great. You have to come up with the content. Similar to you, Dennis, you produced a most beautiful book, whether it's the paperback or especially the hardcover. Boy, that is such a neat book. And I am going to get a copy of that now and have it here and, flip it open every once in a while, especially to the quotes, but maybe to the poetry. Never really been a connoisseur of poetry, a fan per se, although I have said before, Dennis, that music with lyrics, you take the music away, you've got poetry in many, many songs. So I'm excited. I'm very excited about all of this.
Wonderful. The poetry in this book is not normal. I mean, it's poetry designed to motivate you and uplift you and pull you out of your fog. So it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not, you don't have to spend time trying to think, well, what does that mean? You know what it means as soon as you read it.
They are not foreign words in another language. Dennis Henson's my guest. Pardon me, we are talking about the Real Impact Daily Inspiration series here on Tell Me Your Story. Dennis, before we wrap things up here on the program, we still have plenty of time here to talk about lots of different things. Can you share with us, and maybe you already have, but one of your success stories that every once in a while you think about it and it just kind of bolsters the confidence that you already have and just reminds you, even though if I'm correct, you're in your 70s now, correct?
Yeah, almost 80s.
Oh my heavens. So you've got a lot of years to look back upon, but is there one? I know probably are many, but can you pick one and share with us that you look at and go, I didn't think I could do that, but wow, I did it.
Yeah.
I did it.
Well, Richard, when I was a young man, I was dyslexic and had attention deficit. I mean, I was, if there was anybody who ever hated school, I was that person. I felt like I was in prison. I remember in the seventh grade, there was a clock on the wall. I think the room that we were meeting in, I was taking math. I believe it had been a library in the past, but there was a clock on the wall with a big second hand that went around, and I would look at that second hand and count the seconds till I was going to be free, sitting in that awful classroom. The only thing I liked about school, the only salvation was that I was in the band and I loved the band and I played the drums and I really loved the drums. And I had gone to a music camp at the University of Alabama and found out about drum rudiments and I learned all of the drum rudiments. Unfortunately, I was the only one in the band who had that knowledge or even cared about it. I was the only drummer in the band that read music or read the drum music. And so I was excited about being able to play the Downfall of Paris and the three counts and the solos that were in the books that I had gotten about drumming. But other than that, school to me was just boring and I try to be out as much as I could. And when we would have assembly, I'd think, oh, that's wonderful, no class. And so one day I went to school. My father was a disabled veteran, so we were very poor. His pension was a 60% of a veteran's pension, which that was nothing. We lived on my grandmother's farm and we ate out of, what he would buy one box of shotgun shells at the beginning of hunting season, and we'd eat on squirrels on what he shot, rabbits and squirrels, and we had our own garden. So college to me was never ever even thought of. It was thought of like this. I know these people that go to college, they're just amazing. Oh my God, they went to college. That's just amazing. But to me, the best time of the year was when school got out for summer. I was free for a couple of months. And when I graduated from high school or got out of high school, however I got out, either way was fine with me. It's going to be summer forever. That's what I thought. So the chances of me going to college when I went to school that day were zero. There was just no way. So I went to school and over the intercom, they said, we're going to have assembly. And I thought, that's great. No class this afternoon, just going. I didn't care what the assembly was. I was just glad to be in there rather than in class. So when we got there was a college band on the stage in the auditorium. Well, it was a gymatorium. And I thought, okay, I'm in the band. Music's fine. They played their spring concert. And I thought, yeah, that's okay. But then the band director turned around and said, well, I brought a little treat for you. We brought our marching drum section and they're going to put on a little show. And I thought, oh, wow, that's good. I play the drums. I don't know if you saw the movie Drumline from 2002, where they were doing amazing stuff. But that was in 2002. Mm-hmm. This was in 1963, 40 years earlier. And they were doing that kind of stuff. And when I saw that, my mind just exploded. I went to my band director and said, I got to be in that drum section. I have got to be in that drum section. What have I got to do? And he looked at me and he said, well, you have to go to college. And they're not going to let you in college, not with your grades. So you might as well forget that. And I said, well, if I change my grades, can I go to college? And he says, well, if you don't, you'll never get in. Now, the year before, they called my mother up there and said, Dennis is failing the ninth grade. If he doesn't start taking his books home. So I had to start taking my books home and studying enough just to pass. I was making D's and F's. I went to all my teachers and said, I'm going to college. About half of them laughed in my face. That's how bad a student I was. So from that point till I graduated from high school, my grades went from D's and F to A's and B's. And even then, I had had such bad grades. I still had some humps to jump over to be able to get into school. But 3 years after that, I was accepted into Jacksonville State University. And the next year, I was in the drum section. The following year, I was the section leader of that drum section. Now, how did that happen? I was broke. I couldn't afford college. I didn't have the grades. I wasn't interested. What changed? Here's what changed. Once I decided what I wanted and I would do whatever it took to get it, it was a done deal.
And let me tell the listeners, because they didn't see what you did, he pointed with both index fingers to his head. His mindset changed. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing. I no longer hated school because it was the bridge to get me from where I was to where I wanted to be. So I enjoyed studying. I enjoyed the teachers. I enjoyed the grades. I mean, it was like the earth moved under my feet. My direction totally changed 180 degrees. And I was a different person from that point until I reached the goal.
Wow.
That's happened several times in my life. That's just the first one that came to mind.
Yeah. Well, I will save some of mine for a later program, but suffice it to say, I think that we all, if we will genuinely, honestly, truly look at our lives, because even if you come from a past that has been difficult, challenging, hard, in whatever fashion that appears, there are moments. I honestly do believe this. There are moments, if you look hard enough, that you can say, wow, I did that. That's exciting that I actually was able to accomplish, even if it was a little thing. And that's one of the other things that we could talk about. We will save for another time too, is it's not the big things that we want to jump up and down and cheer and say, oh, I did this. It is those, yes, but it's really the little things. And they have a cumulative effect. In my opinion, they have a cumulative effect on our psyche, if you will. And maybe we'll also talk a little bit about the psychology of inspiration as well. Somewhere down the road, neither of us are experts, but it's something we can touch on. And I would look forward to doing that with you, Dennis. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Well, thank you, Richard. I really appreciate these meetings. I enjoy them very much.
Well, I'm getting more and more excited. It's just, we're a little over halfway through the year of programs and the series, and I can only imagine, and I will imagine. Okay, I will imagine what can come next, and for both you as well as myself. So I thank you, and I thank you folks for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Before I go any further with all of that, I want to remind you to go to realimpactbook.com. Scroll down to the bottom to the podcast attendee and click on that to get yourself a free ebook. If you have unlimited Kindle, you already have access to a free ebook. If you'd like to purchase a copy, there are other links on that same page of realimpactbook.com that you can purchase your copy, hard copy or paperback, or Audible. I love Audible because that's what we're listening to in this series of the stories. And get yourself a copy. It's well worth the time and energy. And I hope that you folks will continue to listen to these programs, this series, the Real Impact series here on Tell Me Your Story, that comes your way Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And I should specify that the Real Impact series comes your way 8 a.m. on Wednesdays. But we also have other programs and guests on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday morning at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and then, of course, the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday editions at 8 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. Podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations. We're also on YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. And there's a benefit to that because you kind of get to know myself as well as my guests, and in this case, Dennis Henson. And I hope that you'll get in touch with him. There is a contact link at realimpactbook.com where you can email him, or his phone number's right there. Give him a call. He'd love to hear from you. We also remind you to join us, and until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.